Good evening. The hour of 6:30 p.m. having arrived, I will call to order this regular meeting of the Joint Planning Board and Planning Licenses and Development Committee. Anyone wishing to view a copy of the agenda and supporting materials will find it in on the city website. If you are in our audience tonight, you may access the agenda from any mobile device. Copies of the printed agenda are available in the wall pocket just as you entered the meeting room. To receive electronic copies of future agenda packets, please go to the homepage and subscribe to the City Meetings email list. The public and other board members will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on the agenda items under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. Anyone who wishes to address the committee is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room and identify themselves by name and address prior to speaking. Will the staff please conduct the roll?
For the Planning Board, Harold Farrington.
Here.
David Orgaz.
Here.
Mayor George Hansel.
Here.
Councillor Mike Remy.
Here.
Emily Levine Bernier.
Here.
Ryan Clancy.
Here.
Roberta Mastro Giovanni. Armando Rangel.
Here.
And alternates Gail Summers. Alternate Randolyn Marcolon. Alternate Tammy Adams. Alternate Kenneth Cost. For PLD, for the Planning Licenses and Development Committee, Kate Bosley.
Here.
Mike Giacomo.
Here.
Phil Jones. Gladys Johnson.
Here.
Raleigh Ormerod.
Here.
Great. Thank you so much for that. The next item on our agenda is the approval of our meeting minutes from our last meeting of July 10th, 2023. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Move to approve the minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mayor Hansel, second by Councillor Remy. Any comments or changes on those? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is unanimous. Moving right along into our public workshop tonight. This is a workshop on Ordinance O-2023-13 relating to zone change. Petitioner JRR Properties LLC and the Monadnock Conservancy on behalf of owner JRR Properties LLC proposes to amend the zoning map of Keene of New Hampshire by changing the zoning designation of the property located at 0 Ashwillet Street, TMP number 567-001-000 from high density to commerce. The total area of land that would be impacted by this request is 3.53 acres. And at this time, I would like to invite the petitioner. I believe we have Tom Hanna here to present.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Tom Hanna, and I'm a lawyer in Keene, where I've been situated for too long, 45 years, I guess. I'm now a lawyer with a statewide firm called BCM Environmental and Land Law, and we represent the petitioners, Monadnock Conservancy, and the landowner, which is JRR Properties. Tara Kessler, our firm's planner and paralegal, whom most of you know, I think, will do most of the talking as it relates to land use issues. But I want to just give a brief history of this site. I'm not going to explain where it is because you have that in your packet, but I want to explain its history over the last 40 or so years. When the Colony Mill opened to great fanfare and was a very successful retail mall, really, in the converted mill, it was necessary to have overflow parking, and so this site became the parking lot for the Colony Mill, overflow parking for customers, employees parked there, buses parked there after letting off people who visited, especially at the holidays. And it also is where they stored snow that they plowed at the Colony Mill site. And then in 2007, I'm very much aware of this project because I represented a successor owner of the Colony Mill, the Mayo Group, which obtained approval for 83 condominium units on this site. So we obtained site plan approval right in this room after several sessions. The project was going to consist of a very large building of 75 units and then 4 2-unit buildings, brick buildings, along Ashwillet Street. I never knew for sure why that project didn't occur after having received all of the approvals at some great expense, but I think it did have to do with financing and funding. And then in 2000, that was 2007, that project approval. In 2013, my client JRR Properties purchased the site. So that was obviously 10 years ago. They almost immediately entered into discussions with the city and with other interested collaborators, including Monadnock Conservancy, to turn that site or most of it into a city park. They had an interest in children's play area, and they had an interest in making it into having a site for loading of kayaks and canoes. And in 2021, JRR tore up all the pavement, which obviously hadn't gotten too much use for some years, and it was not in good repair. They tore it up, disposed of it, and put loam down, and then seeded it, and now it looks great. And in January 2022, their discussions with the Monadnock Conservancy turned from collaborating on the park to making a gift to the Monadnock Conservancy for the Monadnock Conservancy's much-needed headquarters. And then in last summer, the City Council voted to accept a gift from JRR of 2.5 of the 3 acres for the playground, for a city park. The rezoning is necessary from our perspective, and I won't talk any more about this. That's portion of the rationale, although it's the whole reason we're here, and that is to provide or accommodate the Monadnock Conservancy's headquarters in an office building. So without going through much more, unless you have questions of me, which you can always ask later, I'm going to ask or turn this over to Tara and ask her to talk about the land use issues.
Great. Okay. So the parcel is 0 Ashwillet Street, which is a 3.5 acre parcel that is adjacent to the Commerce District today. It's currently zoned as high density. I'm gonna move this with me. As you can see, well, you have the zoning designations in your packet, but it's surrounded right now by commercial uses to the south, which include the Mascoma Bank Plaza, the Target Dry Cleaners, which is a mixed-use building. There's a gas station on the corner of Ashwillet Street and West Street. The Commerce District spans the length of West Street, and there are also other commercial zones and downtown zones that are along West Street in this area. To the north of the parcel is medium density. Across the street on Ashwillet Street is low density, and there's a small pocket of high density. So the expansion of this parcel to include the expansion of the Commerce District to include this parcel will provide greater opportunities for mixed use on a parcel and for sustainable development on this parcel. Right now, it being in the high density zone, those uses aren't permitted. So you can only have one primary use in a lot, and solar energy systems as a primary use are not permitted on a lot. So This lot, we feel, is well-suited to be commerce because it historically was a lot zoned for commercial uses. Some of you may remember, prior to the land use code update in 2021, the lot was in the Central Business Limited District, which was an expansion of the downtown, well, it was Central Business District at the time, now it's downtown core. But the Central Business District really Limited District, allowed for a variety of high-intensity commercial uses, including residential as well at the time. And that lot had historically been used for commercial purposes, even though it was a parking lot. There was always the opportunity for commercial use to occur there. And so at the time when land use code happened in 2021, the city gave the property owner an option of whether they wanted it to be commerce or whether they wanted it to be high density. And at the time, the property owner wanted to maintain their right to have residential uses since commerce didn't allow for residential then. They did have the intention of making this land, or part of this land, a city park. But they weren't sure what the other use would be. And it wasn't until 2022 that the idea of the use of an office space or regional headquarters for the Monadnock Conservancy came up. So the high-density district is limited in what uses can happen there. That doesn't mean it doesn't allow for density to occur. It's a 3.5-acre parcel, and so there can be significant residential density that could occur on that lot. But the Commerce District would, the designation would be more aligned with the master plan's sort of intent for that neighborhood, which is designated as the Court Street, Ashwillet Street neighborhood, which is in the city's primary growth area. And the master plan identifies this area as a neighborhood being comprised of a mix of office and commercial uses that transition to residential uses, combined with open space and trail amenities. The proposed zoning will allow for these mixed uses to occur. The parcel will continue to be next to the Ashwillet River green space. It would continue to provide a transition into those more residential uses that are further along Ashwillet Street. But it would allow for this mixed use to occur on the parcel, which is why we're here tonight. The zone change won't make the lot or its current use non-conforming, meaning if this were to become commerce, the lot size meets the minimum requirements in the zoning, which is 15,000 square feet in the Commerce District. This lot has 3.5 acres. The existing use is currently undeveloped open space, which would be permitted in commerce. And in addition, as I mentioned before, this zone change will allow for our client to pursue their use of park, green space conservation area, as well as office and environmental conservation education center, and also to permit a ground-mounted solar energy system. So those are the three uses that were this zone change not to happen, we'd be pursuing variances.
Great. Well, thank you for the background on that. And I did read a lot of that in the packet, and I know that you're very well versed on all of those land code changes that happened. And I can see how this is a parcel that kind of got lost in the mix of that citywide change. So I'm definitely very open to listening to the committee and what the questions are, and considering the request. Do we have any questions for the petitioner? Councilor Giacomo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tara, I'm not sure, I can't remember exactly when you left the city, if you were part of the decision-making for the rezoning that we did. I know you were certainly in the early phases. What was the rationale behind changing that parcel when we did the redistricting?
Yeah, so, and I have the old zoning map with me, which I can
Right.
pass around, but at the time, there were 5 parcels on the Ashwillet corridor that were zoned Central Business Limited, and that district was eliminated with the land development code, and so there needed to be a zone change for those parcels. So all of the property owners in that area were given a choice. The city didn't really have, at the time, a strong preference in either direction. There was no policy set forth that would say this should be high density or this should be commerce. And so, as I noted, the property owner at that time for that parcel, other parcels chose to go into commerce, thought that they may be interested in residential at some point. And since that use wasn't permitted in the Commerce District, which it is now with some limitations, they chose high density. And it's, historically, there'd only been a few parcels, 3 parcels or 2.5 parcels in the high density district in that area. So it created a little bit of a bigger pocket of high density than what historically had been there. This change would bring it back to what it looked like prior to 2021, in that it would become more of a commercial area.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, and I guess that answers even my next question, which was, all right, so now it's going into commerce. I know, what was it, last year, we put in the ordinance that allowed for the 4+1, all those kind of things, the bottom floor commercial. So yeah, okay, that's great. Thank you.
Any more questions? Great, yes, I know it's very hard to predict what kind of ordinances are going to be brought before council for changes, and I think that to have the petitioner or the original owner to have made that decision makes sense, because you couldn't have had the foresight that we would have allowed for residential in commerce at some point, although I think as housing became more of a necessity in our community, it was a logical change for us. But yeah, I think that this is an interesting idea and concept to move forward with this lot, and I'm hoping to hear from staff as well.
I might just say one thing before we turn it over to the staff, and that is, at the time that the decision was made by the landowner to make it high density, that choice, there was already a commitment to gifting 2.5 acres. So it really only affected an acre.
Great. Well,
Thank you.
guys for
Sorry,
your
sorry
presentation.
to.
No, it's great information. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Evan Clements, planner. I'm going to focus my comments mostly on master plan consistency. The applicant did a very good job of explaining the existing and proposed land use implications of this application. In staff's review of this proposal, I looked at it, or we looked at it, I should say, kind of like there's a real economic opportunity, and the economic development chapter of the comprehensive master plan really kind of encapsulates some of that, with the need for a strong and diverse economy in order to grow and prosper, enhance Keene's quality of life. The economic development chapter discusses that the community wants new businesses that would support the city's goal for social, financial, and environmental responsibility. This proposal would increase the opportunity for economic diversity that is oriented to serving the neighborhood that the parcel is located in, as well as the community at large, especially considering its proximity to West Street. The environmental responsibility of that component, I think, is really important here, considering that the majority of the parcel in question is located within the floodplain. So any future development is really going to have to balance the needs of the impact to what is more or less now a green site for new development. So for that, with the master plan, the community vision, we felt that the vision focus area that is most relevant to the proposal would be focus area 2, the unique natural environment. Achieving a unique natural environment includes adaptive reuse of existing developed parcels. This can include returning a developed parcel to a natural state in order to accommodate the natural, undisturbed environment surrounding the subject parcel. Like I just said, this parcel was located within the 100-year floodplain, and any future development of the area would be required to implement low-impact design techniques such as green infrastructure and floodplain mitigation strategies, including compensatory storage. The proposed zoning change would provide the opportunity for commercial activity, and then also would allow housing above the ground floor for any future development. Very briefly, I'd just like to read the definitions of the 2 zoning districts currently and the intent of those zones. So the high-density district is intended to provide for a high-intensity residential development and associated uses. All uses in this district shall have city and water and sewer service, which is present at the street. The proposed zone, commerce, the commerce district is intended to provide an area of intense commercial development that is accessed predominantly by vehicles. Shopping plazas and multiple businesses in one building would be typical in this district. And then again, all uses in this district shall have city water and sewer. I know we have discussed about proposed future use of this parcel sort of lightly, but I would like to remind the committee that that might not be the end user for this parcel, and there is an opportunity for a very intense commercial use of this parcel if it is rezoned as to commerce. So I would just ask that everyone keep that in mind as we move forward with this deliberation. So lastly, I will just say the implications of the proposed change. The proposed amendment would create an area of commerce that is surrounded by residential districts in the north and east, conservation district to the west, and commerce to the south and southeast. The proposed change would increase the number of allowed uses for the parcel. The change from high density to commerce would bring the parcel more in line with what was historically allowed on this parcel before it was changed to high density with the adoption of the Land Development Code. And then, Madam Chair, the recommended motions are very straightforward for this type of application. I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's all I have at this time.
So I do want to get us started off with a couple of questions. I'm not sure if we will have an answer, but with the gift of the two and a half acres, I believe it is, will there be a subdivision required?
Yes.
And has that application been brought before the
Not
city?
at this time.
And do we have an idea of what that division would look like? Would the remaining acre be up against the current commerce zone, or would it be up against the district? Yes. well-
I would say the applicant would be better prepared to answer that.
I'll use the plan here that Tara did. It would be right across the top. So the north
Would be the.
would be the acre that would remain. And Monadnock Conservancy plans to go right in the northeast corner,
Okay.
next to which, to the west would be a solar array. We're not sure at this point whether it would be mostly on carports or standalone.
So that would put the piece of land that would be not remaining as green space up against the residential neighborhood.
That is correct.
And it would remove the access to the river. It looks like the land extends to the river only in that one corner.
I'm not sure I understood exactly what that question is. The access to the river is, we would anticipate, but that would be the city's
That would be the
decision.
city's.
Would be somewhat in the middle with
Okay.
with an entrance on the southern part, parking along here, so that the Monadnock Conservancy would look across a park-like thing instead of having the lot bisected by a pavement and parking.
Right.
And
I'm just trying to imagine the space without Monadnock Conservancy as the occupant. So if for some reason there was a decision made that didn't come to fruition, and that 1 acre would be left to be developed into any one of these uses that are listed on, I think, page 16 of our packet. I'm not sure if you all have your packets in front of you, but there's a very clear outline in our packet this evening of all of the options if this parcel moves into commerce that would be allowed. And it might look very differently if it was not Monadnock Conservancy, if it was something like a motor vehicle dealership, or I think there was like private club or lodge, so we have to imagine that it might not be Monadnock Conservancy forever. It could change hands, or it could as like the previous project might not come to fruition. But once that underlying zoning is changed back, it does become a permanent thing that goes along with the land.
The other thing that Tara reminded me of is that one reason for the formulation of the subdivision in the way that I just identified is because a good portion of that 1 acre, at least in the northeast of the entire lot, would be outside the floodplain.
That makes sense. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? And you might, if you don't mind, just staying put for a minute, just in case.
Just going to get my file.
Great, thank you. Counselor Giacomo. Oh, Harold, sorry. I missed you on the side.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is the existing rail trail. It's not really laid out on this property where it goes. Does it?
That would not be impacted. You're talking about along the river?
Yes.
No, that wouldn't be impacted at all.
So that would remain in its
Yes.
current state?
Yes.
Okay, so it wouldn't be touched by the solar array?
No.
Okay.
It's hard to tell, and I apologize for my own vision, because your map is lovely, it's just very far away from me. And the map that I have on page 13 of our packet, it appears as though the lot does abut the river. I don't know, Tara, if you can see that as well. And the trail system does run along the river there,
Yes.
back toward the hospital area. So does the trail bisect this property?
Madam
or
Chair, the trail is fully on City of Keene property.
Fully on City of
Yeah.
Keene property? Okay, great, thank you. Does that help?
Okay. All right, great.
Counselor Giacomo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think one thing we have to keep in mind is if we're subdividing this property, that is completely out of the scope of anything we're talking about right now. That's future looking. There has been no proposal to subdivide the property yet. So we're talking exclusively about turning the entire property into zoned as commercial, regardless of what either this petitioner or any other petitioner decides to do with it. Not commercial. Yeah, commercial. So that's just something to keep in mind here, that they could, if someone else came along, they could change any part of that into a high-density commercial. That's not a real zone, just a application. An intense commercial area could be done on any part of that, not necessarily the top, not necessarily the bottom. So I think, again, as a committee or as a set of committees here, we should really be putting that out of our minds, the subdivision. That's not really in scope, I don't think, for what we're deciding tonight, just from what the city was talking about earlier.
Well, but also a very good point, because I think that there has been a lot of conversation about this gift to the city of this green space, but where it hasn't made it all the way through the process and been finalized at this point. At any point, once we change the zoning, JRR could turn around and decide to sell this to any manner of developer.
Madam Chair, that will not happen. It's been pledged, it's been voted, an offer was made, and there will be a contract.
And I, in my heart, believe that, because I know at the city level, we've been discussing this for quite some time. I think it's just prudent to make everyone aware that it's not, I guess, a signed contract at this point. Did we have any questions on this side of the room? David, did you, no? Okay. Anyone else? So what the process is, just for, I know Tara knows very well what the next steps are.
And I do.
And you do as well? Okay. But just for anyone listening, this is not a formal public hearing, but we are going to take comments from the public. So if there's anyone who would like to speak about this evening, please approach the microphone and state your name and address for the minute taker. Yes.
Peter Hansel, 61 Bradford Road in Keene. I'm on the board of the Monadnock Conservancy and also on the building committee for that conservancy, but I'm here actually to talk about another role that I have, which is being on the Energy and Climate Committee that the city has. And several years ago, the ECC committee decided to look for sites in the city that would accommodate potential solar arrays for potentially a community solar array or anything that would move us closer towards our goal of becoming 100% energy, renewable energy in the future. One of the first sites that came up was this site. And I contacted Andy Bohannon at the time to see if the city would, had this on its radar and would be interested in trying to move a solar array consideration for that site. He told me about the current ownership and the fact that they were in discussion with the owners about not only having a donation of some of that property towards the city, but also including a solar array on that site. So that was early on in the discussions about this site. So I just wanted to let you know that from the point of view of the Energy and Climate Committee, this has been a prime site for solar array, and the fact that it would be, if it is changed to, the zoning is changed, that would allow that to happen on this site. So I just wanted to put that in your bonnet.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, come forward.
My name is Ryan Owens, and I'm the executive director of the Monadnock Conservancy. I've been there for 17 years. I'm not a Keene resident. I live in Walpole, but our office is in Keene at 15 Eagle Court and has been there since the early 90s. While I know that the near-term intended uses for the property are necessarily immaterial to the consideration of the rezoning, I nonetheless wanted to provide a little context into what the Monadnock Conservancy is and why we're obviously strongly endorsing this proposal and excited about the potential to be relocating to this site. For a little background, the Monadnock Conservancy is a nonprofit land conservation trust. We're about 33 years old. Most of that history, we have been based right here in Keene. And over that time, we've conserved over 23,000 acres, many of which are in Keene. We do that, of course, for the benefit of nature, but ultimately we do it for the benefit of people and the quality of life enjoyed by people in Keene and in the greater Monadnock region, as it is derived from the proximity to open space, whether that is open space as places to recreate or forests to help clean the air and water, forests to help mitigate flooding in Keene coming off of the hillsides, farmland to provide food to our local food system, timber for forest products needs. We do all of that, and we are looking forward to a major effort to expand that impact. We are launching a campaign to expand our staff from 10 to 14 people to be able to do more of that conservation work, and this new building, as proposed, is part of that vision. We had the opportunity, we could have chosen to have our headquarters somewhere out deep in the woods somewhere, maybe adjacent to a nature preserve. But we chose to stay in Keene, to be close to where people are, and hopefully through that connection and that proximity and that visibility, be building the relevance of open space, of conservation, of the benefits of nature to more and more people. And what better place to do that than adjacent to a city park and on the edge of a neighborhood. I will add that in the interest of building relationships with abutters, we did reach out by letter to all of the abutters of this lot and invited them to a gathering that we held about 2 weeks ago on the site. Only one couple showed up, unsurprisingly. They lived directly across the street on Ashwillet Street, but they were very supportive. They remembered the scale of the condominium proposal that could have been there, and were excited about the potential for what has been proposed. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you for that background, too. Anyone else? Welcome.
Hi. My name is Jacqueline Headings. I'm resident of Keene, and this particular plot of land is near and dear to me because I actually live on Ashwelot Court. So when I am sitting on my front porch or looking out my living room windows, I do see that. Just to give you a visual, I live here
Okay.
in section number 4. Anyway, so a few things I know from reading last month's minutes and then looking ahead at the staff report. I understand that what's in front of you tonight is changing the zoning.
Yes.
And then, by the way, a really good report because that helped me learn what the current zoning is. And I would say let me back up and first say I've been a resident on Ashwelot Court for 8 years. I'm not a property owner, I am a tenant, but I do love living there. It's a great little spot in our neighborhood. It's been great to see it not be a horrible blacktop parking lot, and it's now a lovely green space, which has sort of provided a sneak peek of what the potential is for that area. But back to the zoning, when I read the definition of the current zoning to be high density, I would tell you that if that were to become residential or a condo area, that would greatly change the vibe of the neighborhood for what folks in our area are used to right now. When it was a blacktop and now still occasionally, even though it's fenced off, it is sort of a cut through for folks in our neighborhood to either get to the commercial area over there or get over to the park and the riverway. So to imagine all of a sudden either a bunch of single-family homes or duplexes or a large condo complex would really, I feel, in my opinion, take away from what folks in the area are currently used to. There's a lot of pedestrian traffic on Ashwelot Street because obviously we've got all of the residential neighborhoods and then we've also got the city's housing in that back nook. So that would really, I think, take away from that. So I do support switching the zoning to commerce. And then just to answer some of your other questions that you had asked earlier, Chair Bosley, and the other folks answered it, but right now the cut through, when folks cut through, because there's a little opening here and then there's another opening here where there was once, the driveway, most folks will cut through and access the river trail and the river here. If you were to cut through down here, you can kind of make it out if you look at page 13 of your packet. There's a little sort of creaky, marshy area, so no one would want to cut through there. And then if you're wondering like what our street is, the Ashwelot Court is actually a dead end.
Okay.
So that's why we don't, occasionally we'll see people that will come and park because they think they can access the river trail here, and then they discover, oh, it's dead ends, it's woods, it's marshy and mucky, so then they promptly leave and then they go around and park in the commercial area. Probably another reason too, again, just speculating, that a developer has not found interest to buy this property and then turn it into condos or single family is because you're then facing the backside of the little strip mall area here, like where Jenna's Market is and all of that. In terms of what's before you with the zoning, again, as a tenant, I support that. I don't know why it's timed out.
That's okay. I think as long as your light is on, they're picking up sound.
Gotcha, okay. And then I would say in terms of what the hopeful goal is for having Monadnock Conservancy there, and then the other part, the park, I strongly support that. Selfishly, I'd much rather look out my living room window and see either a nice office building or some solar arrays, knowing that that's doing something for the greater good. And then for our neighborhood, to have a park space there, I think would be tremendous. Believe it or not, the sound carries quite easily during certain times of the years, and I can hear kids and families when they're playing in the park that's, across from Starbucks. So there is definitely a current interest in folks visiting that park area. But to have a more formal space for kids, families, whomever to interact, I think would really lend itself to the local neighborhood, to visitors and, that are coming here that want to do the river trail and then sort of have that destination point, be it at the beginning or the end of their walk, I think would be tremendous. So, but again, I know that's separate, but I'm just throwing that in there while I'm here, so.
Great, well, thank you for your
You're welcome.
comments. Anyone else this evening? All right, seeing none, we will close the public comment portion, and I'm going to look to the board to have a conversation about this. Does anyone want to get us started? Counselor Giacomo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I feel like if there was an intent to having it be rezoned as high density, it was to increase housing, which is also allowed in a commerce anyways. Its previous use was commerce. We're going back to what its prior use was. I don't see a lot of reason why we wouldn't. And if the intended if the intended plans come to fruition, that's amazing. That is probably a best case scenario with this lot. But worst case scenario, we're no worse off than we were, I feel.
Anyone else? Well, I also have to agree with Counselor Giacomo. I feel like this is not a departure from what the original intent would have been in the prior zoning before the Land Development Code. And now that we've included residential in commerce, it's even a bonus. If the current proposal, taking that out of the equation, that would obviously be wonderful. But if we were to have a development that happened in this area that had some mixed use on it, that would also be a benefit to the city. So I don't have a problem seeing this move forward either. Councillor Ormerod.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think there is a high upside to the solar array being visible in that spot, demonstrating what we are doing. The commercial zoning allows us more upside, not just for commercial development, but for economic and social development. So I can support this wholeheartedly.
Great. Anyone else? Yes, David.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I have confidence in the Conservancy's pledge and look forward to the future mock-ups of what will be going in there. I think they will be outstanding, so I look forward to that and support this. Thank you.
Great. Anyone else? Yes, Ryan.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I'm just concerned where it seems like we're putting the intended purpose into the equation a lot. It seems like people are working around, and I feel like as much as I'm in favor of the intended purpose, I'm just worried about the potential of what the zoning would do to that property. And I feel like there are outlets for the applicant to go through zoning board and then to planning board. And I know we're not supposed to equate the applicant, but it seems like we are in our decision. And so it not being subdivided or a subdivision proposal being presented, it has my concerns there as well. And the example of the car dealership going in that you gave is,
And it is my responsibility, I feel, to make sure that everyone is operating off from full information, which is why I point out those sorts of potential non-intended consequences, right? Like, we can hear about a project and we can fall in love with that project. And we heard about this at our last joint committee meeting. I think there was some conversation about the rezoning of a parcel with an applicant who we would all love to support, but there is always a potential before that project breaks ground that there could be a change of hands and there could be some unintended consequence. Personally, in this case for myself, one of the things that I read in the packet is that you cannot have a secondary use in a high-density district. So even if we left this as high-density and we were to see housing developed in that area, you would not be allowed to have a solar array associated with that as a secondary use, which to me, I think, doesn't lend itself to our energy and climate goals that we try to achieve regularly, which is why I lean a little bit more toward being comfortable with this particular rezoning change. I think it gives us a little bit more flexibility in reaching some of our goals, and it's also abuts, so it's not creating a spot zone. It abuts a commerce district, and it was for years zoned in a way that would have allowed a lot of these uses anyway. So which gives me a little bit more confidence that it would be good for it would fit in with the neighborhood. Mayor Hansel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, you just have to keep in mind what we're looking at tonight. And that's to, as a planning board, just determine whether this is consistent with the master plan, which I've taken dozens and dozens of those votes over the years, and I don't think we've ever said that something is not consistent with the master plan. So it's sort of an exercise, but this is all going to have to be debated by the city council. They're ultimately going to have to approve this ordinance change. And the PLD committee is recommending that I set a public hearing for this, but I will be setting a public hearing for this. So, with that, I would make a motion that I find this application for an ordinance change consistent with the Keens 2010 master plan.
Second.
So this is a planning board only vote, so I'm going to turn
Okay,
this over to you.
so, thank you, Mayor. So we have a proposal for the planning board, half of the room, that this proposal of zone change is consistent with the master plan. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is passed by the planning board.
Great, thank you. And likewise, I think it's good to get some of these questions out in case there are some answers that we can get from staff. But our job as the Planning, Licenses, and Development Committee is to ask the mayor to set a public hearing, which he is planning on doing. So this is our formality. We like to talk about that often here at Joint Committee. Do I have a motion?
Move to set a public hearing?
I'll second it.
Motion by Counselor Giacomo, second by Counselor Johnson. All in favor? And that is unanimous by us as well. So the next step in the process will be the public hearing, which will be there'll be an opportunity for all of this information to be brought in front of all of the counselors. And after that hearing, the PLD committee will debate and send a recommendation back to full council for a vote again. Thank you guys for coming this evening.
Thank you.
All right, and then our last couple of things are new business. I don't know if we have anything for new business on the table this evening.
Madam Chair, we do not.
And our next meeting then would be Monday, September 11th, 2023. It looks like it's about 7:18, and I would say this meeting is adjourned.